There is a lie that every single one of us has been told, and most of us never questioned it. The lie goes like this: humans started out as primitive cave dwellers, barely able to rub two sticks together, and we've been climbing upward ever since, all the way up to us, to satellites, to AI, to the ability to split an atom. The story makes us feel good about ourselves. It makes us feel like the smartest people who ever lived. But that story is falling apart. Right now, as you watch this, archaeologists around the world are pulling objects out of the ground that have no right to exist. Things that don't fit our timeline. Things that break our rules. We spent decades learning how to engineer nanoparticles, only to discover that Roman craftsmen were already doing it 1,500 years ago. We build concrete bridges that crack and crumble after half a century, only to find ancient Roman harbors still standing strong in the ocean after 2,000 years, getting tougher with every passing decade. We think we're the peak of human civilization. But what if we're not even close? Welcome to the History Chronicle. In this video, we're going to open the black box of human history and pull out 5 discoveries that have left the world's brightest scientists scratching their heads. 5 lost technologies so precise, so powerful, so ahead of their time that even with all our modern equipment we can barely understand them, let alone copy them. Stay with us, because by the end of this video, the way you see human history will never be the same. Discovery 1. The year is 1533. A column of Spanish soldiers is pushing through the Andes Mountains, gasping for every breath in the thin mountain air. Their legs are burning, their hearts are pounding. At over 12,000 feet above sea level, even walking in a straight line feels like a punishment. They are looking for gold, glory, and new lands to conquer for the Spanish crown. They have already torn through one civilization. They are confident, armed, and ruthless. But when they finally crest the ridge above the ancient city of Cusco and see what is waiting for them on the hillside, every single man stops dead in his tracks. None of them speak, because what they are looking at simply does not make sense. This is Saksaywaman, and the word fortress does not begin to describe it. 3 enormous terraces of stone rise against the hillside in a massive zigzag pattern, stretching nearly 1,000 feet across. But it's not the size of the structure that stops the soldiers cold. It's the blocks that make it. The largest single stone ever measured at Saksaywaman weighs more than 360 tons. Take a moment and really let that land. That is the combined weight of 2 fully loaded commercial jumbo jets, compressed into a single piece of rock. That rock was cut at a quarry miles away. It was carried across difficult, steep mountain terrain. It was lifted off the ground. It was shaped, and it was fitted into a wall sitting at 12,000 feet above sea level with a precision that modern builders openly call extraordinary. The Spanish soldiers were so shaken by what they saw that they wrote about it in their personal diaries. They were convinced no human hand could have done this. They believed it was the work of demons. And then, as if the story couldn't get more dramatic, the Spanish later decided to tear Saksaywaman apart and reuse the stones to build their own homes in Cusco. They arrived with iron crowbars, horses, ropes, and all the tools of a civilization that had just conquered a continent. They managed to take the small stones, the ones their equipment could handle. The giant blocks, they never moved a single one, not even slightly. After days of trying, they gave up and built their city around the ancient walls instead. Those walls are still there today. They have outlasted hundreds of earthquakes, including massive tremors that completely destroyed Spanish colonial buildings in the valley below. While newer structures cracked, collapsed, and turned to rubble, the Inca stones trembled for a moment, settled back down, and carried on. No cracks, no shifting, no damage, just ancient stones, sitting exactly where they were placed, completely unbothered by time. The internet has no shortage of wild explanations. Ancient aliens with laser technology, a mysterious jungle plant whose juice could soften solid rock until it was as moldable as wet clay. Sound waves tuned to a specific frequency that could strip the weight from a stone and float it through the air. And honestly, when you stand next to these walls and see how a 100-ton block fits against its neighbor so tightly you can't even slide a sheet of paper into the gap, you start to understand why people reach for supernatural explanations. But the truth, as it turns out, is something else entirely, something that in many ways is even more remarkable than aliens or magic. It comes down to one single word: obsession. Engineers and archaeologists have spent decades piecing together how the Inca built these walls, and what they found is a process so demanding, so labor-intensive, so extraordinarily patient that no modern construction company would ever agree to attempt it. The Inca used a fitting method that researchers call scribing. Here is how it worked. Imagine you have one massive stone already in place. Now you bring up the next stone, the one that needs to sit on top of it. Your workers hold it suspended on thick grass ropes and wooden beams, hovering just above the stone below. Then your master craftsmen use specialized tools, similar to a compass, to carefully trace every bump, ridge, and curve on the upper surface of the bottom stone, and transfer that exact shape onto the face of the stone above it. Then the real work begins. Dozens of workers pick up stone hammers, not iron because the Inca had no iron tools, just harder varieties of rock, and start chipping away at the upper block, removing tiny fragments, one blow at a time. They lower the stone, check the fit, raise it back up, chip more, lower it again, check again. This process, for a single joint between two stones, could take weeks. And then they moved on to the next joint. The Inca were able to do this at enormous scale because of a labor system called the mita. Every capable man in the empire owed the state a period of service, not in money or crops, but in physical work. This allowed the emperor to gather a workforce of 20 or 30,000 people at once, all coordinated toward a single purpose, like a human machine with no off switch. They pulled the massive stones using ropes braided from tough Andean grass. They used native hardwood logs as rollers and levers. They poured water and wet clay on the path ahead of the stones to reduce friction. They moved them inch by inch, rope pull by rope pull, across mountainous terrain. Could we do this today? Technically, yes. Bring in the biggest cranes on Earth. Use diamond-tipped cutting tools, mobilize a small army of specialists, and we could probably come close. But the cost of building a single wall the way Saksaywaman was built, using modern methods, would run into the billions of dollars. We build with cheap concrete and mass-produced brick because it's fast, it's affordable, and it lasts long enough for our purposes. 50 years, maybe 100. The Inca didn't have a budget, they didn't have a deadline, they didn't have a project manager telling them to cut corners. They had a goal, and they pursued it until their hands bled on the granite. They built for forever. And forever is exactly what they got. Discovery 2, the Lycurgus Cube, London, 1950. A British museum curator is cataloguing a collection of ancient Roman glassware. In his hands is a small cup from the 4th century, a murky jade-green vessel decorated with carved scenes from the myth of King Lycurgus being dragged down to his death. It's attractive enough, a nice piece, nothing that would stop your heart. And then, completely by accident, the curator slides a lamp inside the cup, instead of holding it outside to examine the carvings. The green glass ignites into a deep, rich, pulsing crimson red. He pulls the lamp back out. The cup returns to green. He slides it back in. Red again. Out green, in red. He calls his colleagues. They think he is joking. They come over and they watch, and not a single one of them laughs, because what they are seeing is impossible. Glass does not change color. It does not have moods. It does not respond to light sources by transforming its entire appearance. This does not happen, except it is happening right there in front of them, in a cup that is over 600 years old. Word spread quickly through the scientific community. The Lycurgus cup became one of the most studied objects in the history of materials science. Researchers could clearly see what it was doing. They just had no earthly idea how Roman craftsmen had made it happen in the 4th century AD. The legends surrounding objects like this one in the ancient world were incredible. Cups that could detect poison in a drink, because the presence of a harmful substance would cause the vessel to shift color and warn the host before the wine was served. These weren't just folk tales. They were traded as fact among the powerful, the wealthy, and the paranoid. Royal courts whispered about them. Merchants paid fortunes to own one. The ability to create such an object was guarded like a state secret, passed from master glassmaker to trusted apprentice, never committed to writing. When the Roman Empire collapsed, the chain broke, and the knowledge vanished along with the civilization. For decades, the cup sat in the British Museum, beautiful and baffling, waiting for science to catch up. In the 1990s, researchers finally placed it under a powerful electron microscope. What they found inside the glass made them stop breathing for a moment. The Roman craftsmen had embedded particles of gold and silver into the glass at a size of roughly 50 nanometers, about 1,000th the diameter of a grain of salt. And these weren't random particles. They were distributed with such extraordinary precision that the color-changing effect only works within an incredibly narrow size window. Make the particles slightly larger and the effect disappears. Make them slightly smaller, same result. The Roman glassmakers had found the exact molecular sweet spot, the precise size at which metal nanoparticles interact with light in a way that shifts visible color depending on the direction of illumination. They did this in the 4th century, without a microscope, without a particle accelerator, without a nanoscience laboratory. Nanotechnology, the deliberate engineering of matter at the scale of individual atoms, is something we consider a defining achievement of the 21st century. We use it in cancer treatments that target individual diseased cells. We use it in next-generation computer chips. We use it in medical biosensors that can detect disease markers in a single drop of blood. The Roman Empire was using it to make a drinking cup. The most jaw-dropping part of this story came when modern researchers built a plastic replica of the Lycurgus cup's internal structure, essentially recreating the nanoparticle matrix in a new material, and began testing it with different liquids. When they dripped salt water on it, the color changed in one direction. When they applied oil, it shifted differently. When they tested other substances, each one produced a distinct, measurable color response. They had just confirmed that a 1600-year-old Roman goblet functions as a working chemical biosensor, capable of distinguishing between different liquid substances based purely on optical color response. We developed that same technology for medical diagnostics just a few years ago. Scholars believe the Roman glassmakers produced their nanoparticles through months of painstakingly grinding gold and silver into an impossibly fine powder, then introducing the metal into molten glass at a precise temperature during a specific phase of the furnace cycle, possibly correlated to seasonal variations or carefully observed cooling rates that masters tracked through years of experience and intuition, not instruments. The process lived in their hands and their eyes. When they died, it died with them. We have the cup. We have studied it for 70 years, and we are still not fully certain we could reproduce it today using only the tools and materials available in ancient Rome. Discovery 3. Damascus Steeds. The Crusades. European knights in heavy armor, riding into the Middle East on horseback, fully confident in their military superiority. Their swords are thick, Heavy bars of iron, blunt instruments as much as blades, designed to bludgeon as much as cut. In their minds, nobody in the world is better equipped for war than they are. And then they meet the blades of the Saracens for the first time. And everything changes. The swords are visually striking before you even think about how they perform. The surface of each blade is covered in a flowing, water-like pattern of light and dark waves, almost like a photograph of a river taken from above. They are undeniably beautiful. But beauty is not what concerns the Crusaders. What concerns them is what these swords do in battle. Legend holds that the great Sultan Saladin, wanting to demonstrate the quality of his blade to Richard the Lionheart, chose a test that nobody in Europe would have thought to use. He didn't hack through an iron rod. He didn't split a block of stone. He simply took a fine silk scarf, tossed it into the air, and held his sword steady as the scarf drifted down onto the upturned edge. The silk parted into two pieces under its own weight. A blade so impossibly sharp that falling fabric could not survive contact with it. In battle, the difference was even more decisive. European swords chipped, bent, and went dull against metal armor. Damascus blades stayed sharp even after striking stone. And here was the truly maddening part. This steel was simultaneously harder than anything produced in Europe at the time and more flexible. It could hold a razor edge and absorb impact without snapping. That combination was supposed to be physically impossible. Every blacksmith in the medieval world understood one basic rule of metallurgy. You could make metal hard and brittle, or soft and flexible. You could not have both at once. The properties cancelled each other out. Damascus steel ignored that rule entirely. European smiths spent generations trying to crack the secret. They twisted different grades of wire together and hammered them flat. They etched metal surfaces with acid to create the visual pattern. They layered different types of steel and folded them repeatedly. What they produced were beautiful decorative blades that looked similar on the surface and shared none of the original's remarkable properties. The myths around the true process were vivid and strange in equal measure. Temper the red-hot blade in the body of a powerful slave so his strength flows into the metal. Forge only by moonlight. Recite specific prayers with each hammer strike. Use water drawn from a sacred well at a precise hour of the morning. The recipe was never written down, not a single word. It lived in spoken whispers, passed from father to son, generation to generation. And then, sometime in the 1600s, the chain snapped. True Damascus steel production stopped. The exact reason remains unclear. A disruption in trade routes, the loss of a particular ore source, the death of the last masters who held the complete knowledge. Whatever happened, the tradition died, and nobody even noticed until it was far too late to do anything about it. Then in 2006, scientists at the University of Dresden took a fragment of a genuine 15th century Damascus sword, dissolved it carefully in hydrochloric acid, and examined what remained under a high-powered microscope. What they found rewrote the history of materials science. Carbon nanotubes. Carbon nanotubes, the same microscopic cylindrical structures made of carbon atoms that today's engineers are exploring for use in space elevator cables, ultra-strong armor, and next-generation electronics. We consider carbon nanotubes one of the most exciting advanced materials of the present century, and a Syrian blacksmith accidentally created them in a forge without a single modern instrument hundreds of years ago. Here is how it likely happened. The special steel ingots used for Damascus blades, called woots, came from a very specific region of southern India and naturally contained trace amounts of vanadium and molybdenum. The master smiths, across generations of careful observation, had learned to add particular types of leaves and wood to their furnaces at high temperature. They didn't understand the chemistry. They didn't have the vocabulary for it. But the chemistry didn't need them to understand it. The organic materials, burning at extreme heat, triggered a complex reaction that caused tiny carbon cylinders to nucleate and grow inside the metal matrix itself, reinforcing the steel at a scale far smaller than anything the naked eye could see. The result was a blade with structural support built directly into its molecular architecture, stronger, sharper, and more resilient than anything else on Earth at the time. Why can't we reproduce it now? We can make modern steels with better measurable performance on paper, but we cannot recreate the exact Wootz process. The specific ore deposits in India that contained the right combination of trace elements have been exhausted over centuries. The chemical profile of the raw material has shifted beyond recovery. The instruction, add 3 branches of this specific tree to the fire at sunset, was not poetry or superstition. It was a precise chemical formula, delivered in the only language those craftsmen had, and we lost it. Discovery 4. Roman and conquered. Think about any modern pier or breakwater you've ever seen. Concrete legs disappearing into the surf, salt crust on every surface, rust stains bleeding down from the steel reinforcement bars hidden inside. After 30 years of ocean exposure, even the best modern marine concrete is visibly struggling, cracking, flaking, corroding from the inside out, waiting for the next maintenance budget to arrive before it fails completely. That is our best work. Saltwater beats us in a few decades. Now travel to the Bay of Pozzuoli on the coast of Italy and look at the ancient Roman harbor structures sitting in that same saltwater. They have been there for 2,000 years. They are not crumbling, they are not cracking, they are not rusting, they are not rusting. When geologists extracted core samples from these ancient piers and examined them in the laboratory, they were genuinely shaken by what they found. The Roman concrete wasn't merely surviving its long immersion in the sea. It wasn't just holding steady. It was measurably stronger than it would have been on the day it was originally poured. 2,000 years in salt water. And it was still getting tougher. Think about what that means for a moment. Imagine buying a car, driving it for 20 years, and then discovering that the engine is actually running better than it did when you drove it off the lot. It violates everything we understand about how materials behave over time. Everything degrades. Everything wears down. That is one of the most fundamental rules of the physical world. Roman marine concrete doesn't play by that rule. For a long time, engineers told themselves that the Romans must have just gotten lucky. Wrong place, right sand, some accidental combination of local materials that nobody planned and nobody understood. Some theorized it was an unusual regional sand deposit that no longer exists anywhere on Earth. Others pointed to the old Roman habit of adding organic materials, animal blood, egg whites, crushed bone, to building mixtures and wondered if something biological was behind the strength. But the deepest mystery was this: cracks in Roman concrete don't spread. In modern concrete, a hairline crack is essentially a slow death sentence. Water gets in. It freezes and expands. The crack widens. More water enters. The process accelerates until the structure is compromised. In Roman concrete, researchers observed cracks appearing and then closing. New material was growing inside the crack, filling it in from within, leaving the structure stronger at that point than it had been before the damage occurred. The concrete was healing itself, like skin forming a scar over a wound. The answer finally came in 2017, when a research team using advanced X-ray spectroscopy techniques cracked the recipe, and the brilliance of it is stunning in its simplicity. Modern concrete is dead material. It hardens, stops reacting, and just sits there resisting the world for as long as it can before the world wins. It is fundamentally passive. Roman concrete is alive. It is an ongoing chemical reaction that has never stopped. The Romans mixed volcanic ash from the Pozzuoli region with quicklime and this is the part that seems completely counterintuitive, seawater. The very substance that destroys our concrete was the activating ingredient in theirs. Inside each block of Roman concrete, a slow chemical reaction has been running continuously for 20 centuries. The lime reacts with the volcanic ash, which in turn reacts with the seawater. And the result is the gradual formation of an exceptionally rare mineral called aluminium tobamorite, thin, crystalline plates that grow through the concrete structure like the root system of a tree, threading through it, binding it together, making it denser and harder over time. When seawater finds a crack and seeps inside, it doesn't attack the structure. It triggers a fresh cycle of the same reaction. New crystals grow, the gap closes, the concrete strengthens at the exact point where it was weakest. The Romans didn't build against the sea, they made the sea their construction partner. When Rome fell, this knowledge fell with it. The world switched to Portland cement, fast, cheap, easy to produce, and good for perhaps 100 years if properly maintained. Had we continued building seawalls, bridges, and harbor structures using the Roman method, engineers estimate they could remain fully functional for 10,000 years without a single repair. Instead, we chose speed. We chose the lowest possible cost. We chose to build things that we knew would need replacing, and then replaced them over and over, forever. Discovery 5, Greek, fire. The year is 678 AD, and the Byzantine Empire is dying. What was once the magnificent Roman Empire has shrunk down to a single besieged city. Constantinople stands alone on its peninsula, and from the water, the horizon has been replaced by the sails of an Arab armada. Hundreds of warships, packed so tightly together that eyewitnesses later wrote you could barely see the sea between them. The city's food stores are nearly gone. The walls are worn and patched. The army is exhausted. Every strategic mind in the empire has reached the same conclusion. This is the end. The city will fall. Christianity in the east is finished, and then an engineer named Lycurgus appears. He is a refugee. He fled Syria ahead of the advancing Arab forces, carrying nothing with him except the clothes on his back and a rolled scroll tucked under his arm, a scroll containing a formula that he told the emperor could change everything. The emperor, with nothing left to lose, gave the order to build. Bronze sculptures of lions and dragons were mounted on the prows of Byzantine warships. Their open mouths were connected by pipes and tubes running back to pressurized metal tanks below the deck. The preparation took weeks. The Arab fleet waited, confident. They had outnumbered every opponent they had ever faced. When the Arab ships finally moved within range, the Byzantine fleet came out to meet them. And then the lions breathed. From those bronze mouths came jets of liquid fire that screamed across the water's surface for 30, 40, sometimes 50 feet, not like a torch, not like sparks, but like a solid stream of burning liquid, thick and clinging, moving through the air with a terrible purpose. Where it touched wood, it stuck and burned. Where it touched cloth, it devoured. Where it touched human skin, it held on with a grip that no amount of desperate clawing could break. Men screaming, men running, men throwing themselves over the side of their ships and into the water below. And then the sea caught fire. Because when this liquid touched water, it did not go out, it intensified. It hissed and boiled and erupted in fresh bursts of flame, as if the ocean itself had become fuel. Sailors who jumped overboard found themselves swimming in fire. Those who dove beneath the surface came back up into a burning world, gasping for air through a thick ceiling of smoke. The Arab fleet was wiped out completely. Survivors wrote their accounts years and decades later, and the horror is still palpable in every line. They called it the lightning of heaven. They described it as divine punishment, as something no earthly army should possess. Many of those men, hardened warriors, who had conquered vast territories without flinching, said afterward that they would rather die by any other means than face that fire again. The Byzantine emperor was happy to encourage the supernatural interpretation. He publicly declared that the formula had been given to him personally by an angel in the Hagia Sophia Cathedral. The penalty for revealing any part of the secret? Not just execution, the damnation of your entire family line and eternal separation from God. It worked better than any lock or wall. For 500 years, Greek fire defended Constantinople. In 718 AD, another massive Arab invasion fleet arrived by sea. The result was identical. In 941 AD, a fleet led by the Kievan prince Igor, hundreds of ships and thousands of fierce Norse-descended warriors who feared almost nothing on earth, sailed to attack the city. The Byzantines met them with 15 barely functional old ships equipped with the fire-throwing devices. Igor's men were driven back in complete disorder. The survivors returned home and told their people in trembling voices, "The Greeks have heaven's lightning. We could not stand against them." The secret was divided deliberately, like the combination to a vault, split between multiple people who could never be gathered in one place at once. One family knew where to find and process the specific dark petroleum from the shores of the Black Sea. A second family knew the distillation and mixing process. A third knew how to build and maintain the bronze pneumatic pumps. No single person outside the imperial inner circle ever possessed all the pieces at the same time. Then, in 1204, came the betrayal that ended everything. The Crusaders, Christian allies, supposed defenders of the same faith that the Byzantines were protecting, turned on Constantinople and sacked it. The emperor and his court fled for their lives. The master engineers who held the complete knowledge of Greek fire made a choice. They carried the secret into their graves rather than allow it to fall into the wrong hands. The Crusaders ransacked the imperial warehouses. They found the bronze tubes. They found the sealed metal tanks. They found components they didn't understand, connected in ways they couldn't decipher, without the instructions, without the knowledge that had lived in the minds of people now dead or gone. It was just a pile of old metal. The most devastating weapon in the medieval world had become worthless scrap in a single afternoon. Today we have napalm, we have modern flamethrowers, we have chemical weapons of terrible sophistication, but the exact formula for Greek fire, petroleum distilled to a specific grade, combined with quicklime that ignites on contact with seawater, delivered through a hand-built pneumatic pressure system, remains beyond our full reconstruction. Chemists still argue about the exact proportions. Historians still search for surviving manuscripts that might contain a partial recipe. We have hypotheses. We have educated guesses. We do not have the answer. The Byzantine Empire proved something profound. The most powerful technology ever created is completely useless if no one is left alive who knows how to make it. Let's look honestly at what we have just seen. We visited walls in Peru, built with such extraordinary patience and precision that the Spanish Empire, at the height of its power, could not take them apart. Walls that have laughed at hundreds of earthquakes while modern buildings collapsed around them. We held a Roman drinking cup that used nanotechnology 15 centuries before the word was invented, a cup that functions as a chemical sensor so sophisticated that we only recently learned how to build equivalent devices in modern medical laboratories. We examined swords from medieval Syria that contained carbon nanotubes, one of the most advanced structural materials currently known to science, formed inside a furnace by craftsmen who had no idea what they were creating. Guided only by instinct sharpened across countless generations. We discovered that Roman builders understood the chemistry of the sea so deeply that they created concrete which grows stronger in salt water over thousands of years, while our own marine structures fall apart in decades. And we watched an entire empire burn its greatest secret rather than let it survive in the wrong hands. History is not a straight road climbing steadily upward toward us. It is a spiral. Knowledge rises and collapses. Breakthroughs are made and then buried. Entire lifetimes of hard-won understanding can disappear in a single generation if the last person who holds that understanding dies without passing it on. We celebrate our smartphones and our space probes, and we should, but it is entirely possible that we are children building sandcastles on the ruins of something far older and far grander than anything we have yet imagined. Something that left its fingerprints in the stone walls of Peru, the glass of a Roman cup, the folded layers of a Damascus blade, the volcanic ash of an ancient harbor, and the terrified words of warriors who watched the sea catch fire. How many more secrets are waiting out there? How many myths are actually memories of technology so sophisticated that we forgot what they were and called them magic? How many answers are sitting in a museum basement right now, or buried under a city, or written in a language no living person can read, just waiting for someone curious enough to ask the right question? Progress might not be about endlessly inventing things that are new. It might be about having the humility and the courage to remember what we have already lost. If this journey through forgotten history moved you, challenged you, or made you see something differently, share this video with someone who needs to see it. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think is still out there? What do you think we've forgotten? This has been the History Chronicle. Keep asking questions, keep digging. The answers are closer than you think.